Let me guess, you've done everything right. You texted, you complimented, you showed up, you made it clear how much you cared, and yet she pulled away. Not all at once, slowly. Like the more you moved toward her, the more she found reasons to create distance. And the thing that hurts the most isn't the rejection, it's the confusion. Because you don't understand what you did wrong. You followed the rules. Be present, be available, show your value through effort. But here's the truth, nobody ever told you clearly. What you thought was the solution was exactly the problem. And once you understand this, really understand it, not just on the surface, everything changes. Not just the way you interact with women, the way you carry yourself, the way you see yourself, the way you move through the world. So stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't dating advice. It's something much more important. It's the truth about how attraction actually works, and why most men, without realizing it, are doing the exact opposite of what works, while believing they're doing everything right. Let's start from the beginning. Growing up, we're taught that effort pays off. Study harder, get better grades. Train harder, get stronger. Work harder, get more results. It's a linear logic, cause and effect, input and output, and it works in almost every area of life. But then comes the moment, usually early on, when we try to apply that same logic to attraction, and something doesn't add up. Because with women, this equation doesn't just fail to work, it reverses. The more you try, the less you get. The more you chase, the more she pulls away. The more you show how much you care, the less she seems to care back. And this creates a deep confusion. Because in your mind, you're doing everything right, but the results say otherwise. Here's the thing. Attraction is not something you build through effort. Attraction is something that gets revealed through perception. It doesn't respond to how hard you try. It responds to how you're perceived. And that changes everything. When you chase someone, you're not communicating interest, you're communicating need. And neediness, even when it's subtle, even when it's wrapped in kindness or generosity, instantly lowers perceived value. Not because you're not good enough, but because the behavior itself sends a message, I have more to gain from this than you do. And attraction doesn't grow in that direction. It can't. It's built to work the other way around. Think about how desire works in general. Rare things are valuable. Easily accessible things lose value over time. That's not cynicism. That's psychology. When something is always available, when you can have it anytime you want, you stop assigning weight to it. You stop wanting it with the same intensity. But when something carries uncertainty, when you're not sure you can have it, desire grows, attention sharpens, and this applies to everything: luxury, opportunity, recognition, and without exception, romantic attraction. When you're always available, when you respond instantly to every message, when you're always the first to reach out, you become predictable. And predictability doesn't generate desire, it generates comfort. Comfort is pleasant, but comfort is not attraction. Now let's talk about something most men completely misunderstand: emotional tension. Most men think that giving attention creates attraction, constant compliments, frequent messages, total availability. But attention alone doesn't create desire. It creates habit. What creates desire is tension, and tension comes from uncertainty, from not fully knowing where you stand, from emotional contrast, from wondering. When you chase, you eliminate all tension. You make everything predictable, safe, flat. And without tension, there is no spark. That feeling of being drawn to someone you can't stop thinking about, that feeling that makes you check your phone, that feeling that keeps someone on your mind as you try to sleep, that feeling is called emotional tension. And by chasing, you destroyed it. This is the central paradox you need to understand. The man who gets results with women isn't the one who does more, it's the one who does less, but with more meaning. The one who doesn't need to fill every silence, who doesn't need constant reassurance, who doesn't need a specific situation to go a certain way in order to feel good about himself. And that quality, that inner solidity, is incredibly rare. and rare things are attractive, not as a strategy, but because it reflects something real. A man who has a life, who has a center, who isn't defined by the outcome of a single conversation. Let me take you somewhere deeper. When you chase, you shift the dynamic in a fundamental way. You move from being the one who chooses to being the one who seeks validation. And this transition happens quietly, often without you even noticing. One extra message, an unsolicited compliment, a response that comes too fast, a planned change just to make yourself available. Small gestures. But she feels them. Not always consciously, but she feels them. And what she feels is, this man needs me to want him. And when someone needs you to want them, you stop asking yourself if you actually do. You stop investing emotionally. You stop feeling that pull because you already know how it ends. No mystery, no tension, no game. An attraction without tension is like a story without conflict. Flat, forgettable. Now I want to talk about something that scares a lot of men. The confusion. She's warm, then cold, present, then distant. She replies with enthusiasm, then goes quiet for days, and your instinct, trained by anxiety, tells you to chase harder, to do something, to fix it, to reach out. But here's the reality most men never learn. That confusion is often not a bad sign. It's often attraction in progress. It's her processing how she feels, trying to understand what she's experiencing. And when you chase in that moment, when you send that extra message, when you push for clarity, when you try to force an answer, you interrupt that process. You collapse the tension. You make the outcome obvious, and the attraction fades. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to do nothing. Let the silence work. Let her mind come back to you on its own. Not because you're playing games, but because you're secure enough in yourself to not need to control every variable. And here's where everything shifts. The turning point isn't when you find the right strategy. It's not when you say the perfect thing at the perfect moment. The turning point is when you stop asking, does she like me? And start asking, do I actually want her? When you make that shift, when you move from seeking approval to evaluating, everything repositions. You're no longer trying to convince her. You're observing, collecting information, deciding if she meets your standards. And that energy, that quality of selective presence, is felt immediately. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to perform it. It shows in how you listen, in how you respond, in the fact that you don't need every conversation to go in a specific direction. Let me clear something up, because this is where a lot of men get the wrong idea. Not chasing doesn't mean ignoring. It doesn't mean disappearing. It doesn't mean being cold or artificially mysterious. It means something much more subtle, much more real. It means engaging without attachment, showing interest without over-investing, being present without losing yourself. There's a precise balance here. It's not one extreme or the other. Not I chase everything or I vanish. It's controlled presence. A presence that says, I'm here, I'm interested, but I don't need this to be okay. This balance, when it's genuine, is one of the most attractive states a man can be in. Not because it seems untouchable, but because it seems whole. Complete and complete people attract. You can't explain it. You feel it. I want to go deeper now, because there's something underneath all of this that nobody names. The real reason most men chase isn't enthusiasm. It's not genuine interest. It's fear. Fear of losing the opportunity. Fear of not being enough. Fear of ending up alone. Fear that if you don't act right now, someone else will. And that fear seeps into everything, into the messages, into the tone, into the timing, into the words you choose. Women don't just hear what you say, they feel where it's coming from. And fear-based behavior has a recognizable frequency, even when it's well disguised. Even when it's wrapped in charm or humor or confidence, fear is felt. And fear weakens attraction, always, without exception, not because women are cruel, but because they're wired to respond to solidity, not desperation. So how do you stop being afraid? It's not about performing confidence. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about building something real, a life that has value, a direction that excites you, standards you actually respect, boundaries you actually keep. When you have these things, the outcome of a single romantic interaction loses weight, not because you don't care, but because your well being doesn't depend on that outcome. And that emotional independence, that groundedness, is exactly what produces the kind of energy attraction follows. It's not manipulation. It's the natural result of a man who has invested enough in himself to not need everything else to go a certain way. Now, let's take this further, because this goes way beyond dating. Men who chase women tend to chase everything else too. They chase approval from colleagues. They chase recognition from their bosses. They chase validation on social media. They chase versions of success that someone else defined for them. And that same pattern, that same need for external confirmation, shows up in romantic interactions in an amplified way because intimacy touches our deepest insecurities. So, what looks like a problem with women is often a symptom of something bigger, a difficult relationship with your own value, an identity that depends too much on how others see you. And until that changes, until you build something more solid inside, the pattern repeats with different women in different contexts. Same script. Let's talk about something practical. What does a shift actually look like in real life? It's not about waiting 3 days to reply. It's not about always responding late on purpose. Those are tactics, and tactics without the right mindset are empty. They're transparent. What actually changes is the reason behind what you do. You send a message because you have something genuine to share, not to keep her attention. You suggest plans because you're genuinely curious about her, not because you're afraid she'll forget you exist. You give a compliment because it's true, not to get a reaction. The difference between these motivations is enormous, and it's felt, not in the words themselves, in the energy behind them. And then there's leadership. When you stop chasing, you naturally start leading. Not in a forceful way, not in a controlling way. Naturally. You're the one who suggests where to go. You define the rhythm of the connection. You decide when you're available and when you're not because you're trying to control anything, but because you're no longer constantly reacting to external input. You're acting from a center, and that quality, the ability to act from a place of clarity rather than reaction, is one of the most attractive things a man can carry. Not because it's dominant in the traditional sense, but because it's rare. Most people spend their lives reacting to whoever reaches out, to what others expect, to how every move is going to be perceived. A man who moves with his own intention, who consciously chooses where to put his time and energy, has a quality that's felt the moment he walks into a room. There's one last layer I want to explore with you: identity. Because at the end of the day, everything we've talked about, the tension, the scarcity, the controlled presence, the emotional independence, none of it is a technique. It's the natural result of a certain identity, of being the kind of man who has something going on, who has a direction, who knows who he is and what he wants, who doesn't define himself through romantic outcomes, who doesn't treat female attention as the measure of his worth. This kind of man doesn't chase, not because he's learned not to, but because he doesn't feel the need to. And that absence of need, that completeness, is exactly what produces the energy that attracts, not as a strategy, as a natural state of being. And now we reach the end. But it's not really an end. It's a beginning, because what you've heard today isn't something you apply once and forget. It's something you integrate slowly in everyday behavior, in how you respond to messages, in how you suggest plans, in how you show up, not just with women, but with the world. The truth is this: attraction is not something you can force. It's not something you can convince. It's not something you can earn through effort. Attraction is a response. It responds to who you are when you stop trying to impress. It responds to your solidity, your direction, your ability to be present without being desperate. And the most interesting thing about all of this, when you truly understand it, when you truly stop chasing, You don't just stop chasing women. You stop chasing validation in every form. You stop chasing approval. You stop chasing versions of your life built on other people's expectations. And in that space free from chasing, you finally start building something real, something worth having, something that attracts not because you're working for it, but because it's genuinely yours. That's where this leads. Not a man who learned how to avoid being ignored, a man who no longer needs to ask whether he's worth choosing, because he already knows. And that quiet certainty is the most powerful thing you can ever bring into a room.